North Wilkesboro Speedway. So many memories. It was right here at this very spot at the back gate where I did not propose to my wife, Jeannie. She thought we were going to a movie, but instead, I headed to North Wilkesboro, the only place around I could maybe, kinda, sorta consider my territory. It was January. There was nobody else around. When I drove onto Speedway property, I parked the car right here on this spot. Nervous, I tried to start talking. Finally, Jeannie asked, "Are you breaking up with me?" "No." "Then hurry, we're going to miss the movie." Without another word, I reached in my pocket and pulled out the engagement ring. I didn't actually ask her to marry me that day, but she said yes anyway. And then there's the track itself, this glorious old racetrack, getting new life. Before there was a NASCAR, there was North Wilkesboro Speedway. The track was dirt back then, but nobody seemed to care. They were racing. The track was eventually paved with asphalt, and the facility around it built with concrete, steel, and wood. But it's the memories that linger all these years later that are its very foundation. Red Byron raced here. So did Tim Flock. Herb Thomas. Lee Petty. Rex White. Fireball Roberts. And Fred Lorenzen. And the Wilkes County Wildman, Junior Johnson, his name might not have been on the title, but he owned this place once upon a time, both as a driver and as an owner. This is the track where Bobby Allison and Richard Petty went at it so hard in 1972 that both cars were smoking hulks after the race. Richard won, but a fan came after him in victory lane. Richard's brother, Maurice, grabbed Richard's helmet and promptly took care of business. A few years later, in 1979, Bobby got into it with Darrell Waltrip. Darrell crashed. His crew made repairs. And then Darrell came back out onto the track and made it his mission in life to make sure that Bobby didn't catch race leader Benny Parsons. NASCAR official Bill Gazaway was so angry with DW, he came out of the control tower and personally black flagged Waltrip. You can't talk about North Wilkesboro without mentioning Ricky Rudd and Dale Earnhardt's battles there in the late 1980s. They went to war with each other, and so did a good many of their fans. Here's Ricky remembering his battles with the Intimidator.
I remember we had some good battles at Wilkesboro, and it's kind of hard for me to believe that as well as we had run there over the years, we had some runs that weren't so good either, but we had 2 or 3 wins that, to me, would have, I'm not really sure how we ended up not winning, but usually had something to do with bumping into Dale Earnhardt usually was what caused the lack of those wins. But that particular day, I'm not really sure. It seemed like to me the first one you mentioned is, Dale bumped me, and I finally got a chance to repay the favor and turned him around, and then they didn't park both of us, but they seemed like they made, I remember going to the back of the pack. I don't remember him going to the back of the pack, but maybe that's the way the story was.
Yeah.
But I remember being at the back of the pack and worked the whole race to get back to catch him. When I finally caught him, I turned him and spun him, and that cost me $10,000 that day. I remember that.
That one cost you $10,000.
Yeah.
Really?
Yeah.
The next year in '89, it was the last lap going in turn 1. You and he made contact. Both of you spun. Jeff Bodine went on to win. And after the race, it got pretty testy.
Well, it was the closest thing to a riot as I've ever seen. And it was almost scary. I knew they didn't have nowhere near enough police security to handle that situation because he had a lot of fans that were upset, and I had a lot of fans that were upset, and it was pretty interesting. It was kind of scary there for a while. I remember we
Was it really?
Yeah, we ended up going out of the infield that day under a blanket in a van. It's covered up so nobody could see us. You used to park in the infield, and you had to work your way out the traffic. And I remember laying under a tarp in Larry McReynolds' van that day going out of the racetrack.
And in the spring of 1990, Brett Bodine won here. Let me say that again. In the spring of 1990, Brett Bodine won here.
And to this day, Darrell Waltrip continues, and I know Dale Earnhardt would too, but Darrell Waltrip has got terrible sour grapes over this race for a couple reasons. It was the only year he didn't win a race. That ended his streak of not winning races that year. But as I say to Darrell, you had 85 laps to pass me, and you couldn't even keep up. You didn't run second. Dale Earnhardt ran second.
Then the end came, and for more than 25 years, I drove by this place and watched it gradually fade into what seemed like oblivion. But no more. North Wilkesboro Speedway is back.